The unexpected threat in. The year 2145, Earth was a quiet and largely forgotten planet in a galaxy full of powerful alien races. Human technology had lagged behind, and Earth's cities were often seen as quaint relics compared to the advanced worlds of its neighbors. Many in the galaxy considered humans to be weak and timid, a view that had stuck despite humanity's efforts to advance. On a typical day in New York City, bustling with people going about their routines, no one could have guessed that the end of their world was near. The sky was a clear blue, and the hum of everyday life filled the air. But this calm would not last. Without warning, a dark shadow appeared in the sky. Alien ships, sleek and ominous, emerged from the clouds. They belonged to the Lyrans, a ruthless alien empire known for conquering entire planets. Their ships were equipped with powerful weapons and advanced technology that far outstripped anything humans had. As the first blasts from the Lyran ships tore through Earth's defenses, chaos erupted. The planet's military forces scrambled to respond, but their efforts were futile against the superior technology of the invaders. Cities were reduced to rubble, and the few remaining military units were quickly overwhelmed. Humanity's defenses, once thought to be adequate, were no match for the Lyran assault. In the midst of the destruction, a group of ordinary people who had always been considered cowardly found themselves thrust into the spotlight. They were Dr. Ellen Grant, a scientist, Tom Harris, a diplomat, and Jenny Lee, an office worker. Each of them had lived a life of relative peace and safety, avoiding the rough edges of conflict and danger. Dr. Grant was known for her brilliant mind and dedication to her research on renewable energy. Her work had never seen much excitement or glory, and she was often seen as someone who preferred the calm of her laboratory to the chaos of the outside world. Tom Harris had worked as a diplomat, negotiating deals and maintaining peace between countries. His job had been to smooth over conflicts, not to face them head-on. Jenny Lee was an office worker with a knack for avoiding trouble. She had lived a quiet life, largely disconnected from the world's larger issues. On this fateful day, the three found themselves in a conference room, trying to make sense of the crisis. The room was filled with the hum of worried voices and the frantic tapping of keyboards. Outside, the city was a scene of devastation. Dr. Grant stared at the screen in front of her, displaying the damage reports and images of the alien ships. "We need to find a way to fight back," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But how? Our technology is nowhere near their level." Tom Harris, who had been negotiating peace treaties, now faced the grim reality of war. "Our military forces are gone," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "There's no one left to lead the defense." Jenny Lee, who had always preferred to stay out of trouble, felt a surge of anxiety. "What can we possibly do?" she asked, feeling the weight of the situation. "We're just regular people." As the days went by, the situation grew worse. The Lyrans had taken control of most major cities and were tightening their grip on the remaining areas. The world's governments were in disarray, and there was little coordination among the surviving leaders. The global communication network was in shambles, making it difficult to organize any sort of unified response. It was in this environment of confusion and despair that Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny found themselves facing an unexpected choice. With the military in ruins and no clear leadership emerging, they were approached by a group of survivors who had taken refuge in a small, makeshift bunker. The survivors were desperate for help and saw something in the trio that they had not seen in others, a glimmer of hope. "Look, we don't have much time," said a grizzled veteran who had survived the initial attack. "The Lyrans are advancing and we need to do something. You three are all we've got. If we don't act now, it's over." The trio looked at each other, their minds racing. They had never been in such a position before, but the dire circumstances left them with no choice. They could not stand by while their world was being destroyed. Dr. Grant took a deep breath and made a decision. "All right," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We need to come up with a plan. We have knowledge and skills that the Lyrans might not expect." Tom nodded, trying to calm his nerves. "We'll use whatever resources we have left. We might not have military training, but we have brains and creativity." Jenny, although still scared, found her resolve. "Let's do it. We need to fight back even if we're not soldiers." In the coming days, the trio began to take action. They gathered whatever technology and supplies they could find, including remnants of military equipment and scientific tools. They started devising strategies, using their unique skills to come up with unconventional solutions. They were determined to prove that even those deemed cowardly could make a difference. Little did they know that their courage and ingenuity would soon become the spark that could turn the tide against the alien invaders. For now, they were just trying to survive, but their actions would soon show that bravery often comes from the most unexpected places. Unlikely heroes, in the aftermath of the Lyran invasion, Earth was a broken world. Cities lay in ruins, and the air was filled with the acrid smell of smoke and destruction. Amid the chaos, the trio of unlikely heroes, Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee, were trying to find their footing. They had become symbols of hope for the survivors, though they felt anything but heroic. Dr. Grant, with her scientific background, took the lead in organizing their efforts. She set up a makeshift lab in an abandoned building, using whatever technology and materials they could salvage. Her goal was to create something that could give humanity a fighting chance, even with the odds stacked against them. She spent long hours working on her inventions, often losing track of time as she focused on the task at hand. Tom Harris, once a diplomat who specialized in negotiation, now found himself in the role of a coordinator. He used his skills to rally the survivors, organizing them into small groups to perform various tasks. Whether it was gathering supplies, securing safe zones, or providing medical aid, Tom was the one making sure everything ran as smoothly as possible. His calm demeanor and ability to keep people focused under pressure were invaluable. Jenny Lee, who had spent most of her life in a quiet office, found herself thrust into a position she had never imagined. She had a knack for logistics and organization, which proved useful as she helped Tom manage the survivors and coordinate their efforts. Though she was terrified, she discovered a strength within herself she didn't know she had. The trio's first major test came when a group of Lyran scouts were spotted near their temporary base. The scouts were searching for survivors and resources, and if they discovered the base, it could spell disaster. The trio knew they had to act quickly to protect their fragile sanctuary. Dr. Grant, though not a fighter, came up with an innovative plan. She used her scientific knowledge to create simple but effective traps. Using salvaged materials, she rigged a series of alarms and barriers around their base. The traps were designed to alert them of any intruders and slow them down, buying precious time for the survivors to prepare. Tom and Jenny took charge of implementing Dr. Grant's plan. Tom led a small group to set up lookout points and ensure the traps were correctly placed. Jenny coordinated with the survivors, making sure everyone knew their roles and was ready to act if the alarms were triggered. The night before the scouts were expected to arrive, tension was high. The survivors huddled together in the makeshift shelter, their faces etched with worry. The trio, though anxious, tried to keep up a brave front. They knew their plan was a long shot, but it was their best chance. As the sun set, the alarms set by Dr. Grant began to beep softly. The trio and their team listened intently, their nerves on edge. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and the alarms blared, signaling that the Lyran scouts had triggered the traps. The team sprang into action. Tom directed the survivors to the safe areas while Jenny helped Dr. Grant monitor the traps. They watched through makeshift binoculars as the Lyran scouts stumbled into the barriers, their movements growing more frantic. The traps, though rudimentary, were effective in slowing them down. The scouts, confused and disoriented, tried to navigate through the obstacles. The alarms continued to ring, adding to their frustration. Thanks to the traps and the teamwork of Tom, Jenny, and Dr. Grant, the scouts were unable to breach the base. Eventually, the Lyran scouts, realizing they were not getting anywhere, retreated. The survivors cheered quietly, relieved and grateful for the unexpected success. The trio's efforts had paid off, and their courage had made a real difference. In the days that followed, their reputation grew. News of their success spread among the survivor groups, and more people began to look to them for guidance. Dr. Grant continued her work, refining her inventions and developing new strategies. Tom's organizational skills became crucial in managing the growing number of survivors. Jenny's ability to keep everything running smoothly was essential in maintaining morale and ensuring that resources were used effectively. Despite their growing role as leaders, the trio remained humble. They knew they were still learning and that their success was due to the collective effort of everyone involved. They were not soldiers or warriors, but their creativity, resourcefulness, and determination made them powerful in their own right. One evening, as they gathered around a makeshift table to discuss their next steps, Tom looked at his companions with a newfound sense of respect. "We've come a long way," he said, "but we need to keep pushing forward." "There's still a lot to be done." Jenny nodded in agreement. "We've shown that we can make a difference even if we're not what people expected. We need to keep fighting for those who can't." Dr. Grant, looking tired but resolute, added, "Our work is far from over. We found a way to protect ourselves and the others, but we need to find a way to strike back." The trio's determination and resilience became a beacon of hope for the survivors. They were no longer seen as the cowardly individuals who had once avoided conflict, but as leaders who had stepped up in the face of overwhelming odds. Their journey from ordinary citizens to unlikely heroes was just beginning, and their actions would soon set the stage for a new chapter in humanity's fight against the Lyran invaders. Discovering the truth. The days following their successful defense against the Lyran scouts were filled with a mix of cautious optimism and ongoing struggle. Earth's new defenders, Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee, worked tirelessly to keep their small community safe. They continued to refine their strategies and improve their defenses, all while trying to make sense of the chaotic situation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast long shadows over the shattered cityscape, Dr. Grant was hunched over her workbench, examining data from the alien technology they had managed to salvage. Her lab, set up in an old warehouse, was cluttered with makeshift equipment, half-assembled gadgets, and piles of notes. Despite the mess, Dr. Grant's focus was sharp as she tried to uncover any useful information from the alien remnants. Tom Harris entered the lab, his face lined with exhaustion but determined. "How's it going, Ellen?" he asked, peering over her shoulder at the jumble of alien tech and scattered papers. Dr. Grant looked up, her eyes tired but hopeful. "I've been analyzing some of the alien communication devices we recovered. There's a lot of encrypted data, but I think I've found something interesting." Jenny Lee, who had been organizing supplies nearby, joined them. Curiosity piqued. "What did you find?" Dr. Grant pointed to a series of symbols and patterns on her screen. "This is a communication log from the Lyran ships. I've managed to decrypt a portion of it. It looks like the Lyrans are planning something big, and it involves a secret operation." Tom's eyebrows furrowed. "A secret operation? What does that mean for us?" "It means," Dr. Grant explained, "that the Lyrans have a hidden agenda. They're not just invading Earth for resources or territory. There's something else they're after. Something they're keeping secret." Jenny looked worried. "What could be so important that they're keeping it hidden?" Dr. Grant shook her head. "I don't know yet, but we need to find out. If we can discover what the Lyrans are really up to, we might be able to turn the tide in our favor." The trio decided to investigate further. They knew that finding the truth about the Lyrans' secret plans could be dangerous, but it was a risk they had to take. The following day, they set out on a reconnaissance mission to gather more information. They chose to explore an abandoned military base on the outskirts of the city, which was rumored to have been a key Lyran target. The base was a ghostly shell of its former self, with crumbling walls and overgrown weeds. The trio entered cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Tom led the way, using his diplomatic skills to remain calm and observant. Jenny followed closely, her eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Dr. Grant carried a small device that could detect residual alien technology. As they moved through the base, they found evidence of Lyran activity, damaged equipment, alien footprints, and strange markings on the walls. In one of the rooms, Dr. Grant's device picked up a faint signal. "This way," she said, guiding them to a hidden chamber. Inside, they discovered a control room filled with alien consoles and monitors. It was clear that the room had been used recently. Dr. Grant immediately got to work, connecting her equipment to the alien consoles. She hoped to access the data stored in the control room and find out more about the Lyran's secret operation. Tom and Jenny kept watch, their senses on high alert for any signs of intruders. As Dr. Grant worked, she managed to bypass the alien security systems and access the control room's main database. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of encrypted files and data logs. With her knowledge of alien technology, Dr. Grant began to decrypt the files, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. After what felt like hours, she finally managed to access a key document. "I've got something," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "It looks like the Lyrans are planning a major operation involving a powerful energy source." Jenny leaned in to read the screen. "What kind of energy source?" Dr. Grant's eyes widened. "It's something called a quantum nexus. According to the data, it's an extremely powerful and unstable energy source that the Lyrans intend to use as a weapon." Tom's face grew serious. If they use this weapon, it could be catastrophic. It could wipe out entire cities or even destabilize the planet's core. Dr. Grant nodded. "Exactly. We need to stop them from using it." With this new information, the trio knew they had to act quickly. They gathered the important data and left the abandoned base, their minds racing with the implications of what they had discovered. They returned to their makeshift base, where they gathered the survivors and shared the urgent news. Tom addressed the group, his voice firm and resolute. "We've discovered that the Lyrans are planning to use a powerful weapon called the quantum nexus. If we don't stop them, it could mean the end of everything we know." The survivors listened in shock, their faces reflecting the gravity of the situation. Dr. Grant continued, "We need to come up with a plan to prevent the Lyrans from deploying this weapon. It won't be easy, but it's our only chance." The trio's discovery had given them a clearer picture of the threat they faced and provided a new sense of purpose. They were no longer just defending their base, they were now on a mission to save their planet from a devastating weapon. As they began to formulate a plan, they realized that their courage and resourcefulness were more crucial than ever. With renewed determination, Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny set out to stop the Lyrans and protect Earth from the impending danger. Their journey had taken a crucial turn, and their role as unlikely heroes had become even more vital. The fate of their world now depended on their ability to uncover and thwart the Lyrans' hidden agenda. The big plan, the discovery of the Lyrans' plan to use the quantum nexus, was both a wake-up call and a rallying point for Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee. With the knowledge of the impending threat, they knew they had to act swiftly. Earth's future depended on stopping the Lyrans from deploying their devastating weapon. Back at their makeshift base, the trio convened with the survivors to devise a plan. The room was filled with tension and a sense of urgency. Maps, blueprints, and data from Dr. Grant's findings were spread out on a large table. Tom addressed the group, his voice steady despite the gravity of their situation. "We know that the Lyrans are planning to use the quantum nexus as a weapon. We need to stop them before they can deploy it. Here's what we're going to do." Dr. Grant nodded, pointing to a map of the city. "According to the data, the quantum nexus is being held at a Lyran command center located here," she said, indicating a location on the map. "We need to get inside, disable the weapon, and destroy any remaining plans or technology they might have." Jenny, who had been reviewing the logistical aspects of the plan, spoke up. "Getting into the command center won't be easy. The Lyrans have strong defenses, and their technology is advanced. We'll need to be careful and strategic." Tom agreed. "We have a few advantages. First, we've been able to gather intelligence on the Lyran security systems. Second, we have a team of survivors who are willing to help. We need to use every resource we have." The trio began organizing their plan in detail. They divided the tasks among themselves and the survivors. Dr. Grant would work on creating devices to neutralize the Lyran security systems. Tom would coordinate the logistics and manage the team's movements. Jenny would handle the supply lines and ensure that everyone had what they needed for the operation. In the days leading up to the mission, the team worked tirelessly. Dr. Grant's lab was filled with the sounds of tools and machinery as she built devices to disable the Lyran security systems. She designed small EMP, electromagnetic pulse, devices that could temporarily disrupt the alien technology, giving the team a window to move in undetected. Tom spent his time preparing the survivors for the mission. He organized drills, briefed everyone on their roles, and made sure everyone understood the importance of their tasks. He also worked with Jenny to establish secure communication channels so they could stay in touch during the operation. Jenny's role was crucial in ensuring that the team had everything they needed. She managed the supply lines, making sure that they had enough equipment, food, and medical supplies. She also worked on creating distraction devices to help the team get past the Lyran defenses. As the day of the mission approached, the atmosphere was tense but hopeful. The survivors gathered for a final briefing. Tom stood in front of the group, his voice firm and inspiring. Today we're going to do something that will determine the future of our planet. We've all come together to face this threat, and we have a plan. We're going to execute it with precision and bravery. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for everyone. With that, the team set out on their mission. The plan was to infiltrate the Lyran command center under the cover of darkness. Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny led a small team of volunteers who had been trained and prepared for this operation. They approached the command center stealthily, using the cover of night and the distraction devices Jenny had prepared. Dr. Grant activated the EMP devices as they neared the perimeter. The alien security systems flickered and went offline, creating a temporary window for them to slip through. Tom and his team moved swiftly, navigating through the dimly lit corridors of the command center. They used the maps and intel they had gathered to avoid detection. The Lyran guards, caught off guard by the sudden disruption, were slow to react. As they approached the central control room, Dr. Grant and Jenny worked together to disable the remaining security measures. Dr. Grant hacked into the control systems, while Jenny kept watch and managed the team's communication. Inside the control room, they found the quantum nexus secured within a containment unit. It was a massive glowing device that pulsed with an ominous energy. Dr. Grant's eyes widened as she examined the weapon. "This is it," she said, her voice tense. "We need to disable..." Dr. Grant worked quickly, using her knowledge of alien technology to override the containment protocols. The process was complex and risky, but she was determined to succeed. Meanwhile, Tom coordinated the team's efforts, keeping them focused and calm. Jenny monitored the perimeter and ensured that no Lyran reinforcements were approaching. Just as Dr. Grant was about to complete the override, alarms blared throughout the command center. The Lyrans had realized something was wrong and were beginning to respond. The team's window of opportunity was closing fast. "Almost there," Dr. Grant shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. "I need a few more minutes." Tom and Jenny quickly assessed the situation. They knew they had to buy Dr. Grant the time she needed. Tom set up defensive positions and prepared to hold off any incoming Lyran forces. Jenny activated the remaining distraction devices to create confusion and delay the enemy. With a final flourish, Dr. Grant completed the override. The containment unit began to shut down, and the quantum nexus was rendered inactive. The weapon was no longer a threat. "Let's get out of here," Tom called, rallying the team. They made their way back through the command center, evading Lyran patrols and using their planned escape routes. As they emerged into the night, the team felt a surge of relief and accomplishment. They had succeeded in their mission and prevented the Lyrans from using their devastating weapon. The battle was far from over, but their victory was a significant step forward. Back at their base, the survivors celebrated their success. The trio, though exhausted, felt a sense of pride and hope. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, courage and teamwork could lead to victory. Their big plan had worked, and they had taken a crucial step in turning the tide against the Lyran invaders. The final battle, the successful mission to neutralize the quantum nexus, had given Earth's defenders a glimmer of hope, but they knew that the fight was far from over. The Lyran Empire, though thwarted temporarily, was still a formidable enemy. Their forces remained strong, and the threat of complete invasion loomed large. The trio, Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee, understood that their next move would be critical. Back at their base, the atmosphere was charged with a mix of anxiety and determination. The survivors, bolstered by their recent victory, were preparing for the final confrontation. Dr. Grant, Tom and Jenny knew that if they were to succeed, they needed to strike decisively and disrupt the Lyrans' plans once and for all. Tom Harris stood before the gathered survivors, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We've done well so far, but the Lyrans are regrouping and preparing for a major offensive. We need to launch a counterattack to break their momentum. This is our chance to turn the tide and reclaim our planet." The plan was bold and risky. They intended to attack a key Lyran stronghold that controlled their remaining forces and communication networks. The goal was to cripple the Lyran command structure and sow confusion among their ranks. Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny had carefully crafted the strategy, and now it was time to put it into action. As night fell, the team prepared for the final battle. The sky was dark, and the city's remnants cast eerie shadows across the landscape. The survivors, armed with makeshift weapons and improvised gear, gathered their courage. Dr. Grant had worked on new gadgets to help them in the fight, including advanced EMP devices and remote-controlled drones for reconnaissance. The team set out under the cover of darkness, moving stealthily through the wreckage of their city. The Lyran stronghold was located on the edge of the city, surrounded by fortified barriers and heavily guarded. Tom led the way, guiding the team through a series of alleyways and hidden routes to avoid detection. Jenny Lee, ever the logistical mastermind, coordinated the deployment of their resources. She ensured that the EMP devices were strategically placed and that the drones provided real-time surveillance of the enemy positions. Her role was crucial in maintaining communication and keeping everyone organized. As they approached the stronghold, they could see the Lyran defenses in full operation. The area was illuminated by harsh lights, and patrols moved systematically along the perimeter. The team had to time their movements carefully to avoid being spotted. Dr. Grant, using her expertise with alien technology, activated the EMP devices. The devices emitted pulses of electromagnetic energy that temporarily disabled the Lyran security systems. The lights flickered and went out, and the patrols became disoriented. This created a narrow window of opportunity for the team to breach the stronghold. With the defenses compromised, Tom and his team advanced towards the stronghold. They used the cover of darkness and the element of surprise to their advantage. Dr. Grant provided support with the drones, using them to scout ahead and identify key targets. Inside the stronghold, the Lyran Command Center was bustling with activity. Alien officers and soldiers were preparing for the anticipated counterattack against the remaining human forces. The trio's goal was to disrupt their plans and create chaos within their ranks. The team split into smaller groups to tackle different objectives. Tom's group focused on sabotaging the communication systems, cutting off the Lyrans' ability to coordinate their forces. Jenny's group worked on planting explosives near the power sources, intending to cripple the stronghold's infrastructure. Dr. Grant, meanwhile, made her way to the central control room. Her objective was to access the Lyrans' strategic database and retrieve any critical information that could be used to further weaken their position. She knew that time was of the essence. As the team carried out their tasks, the situation inside the stronghold grew chaotic. The EMP devices had caused confusion among the Lyran forces, and the sabotage efforts began to take effect. The power flickered, and communication lines were severed. The Lyran officers scrambled to regain control, but their efforts were hampered by the disruptions. Dr. Grant reached the central control room and began working on the Lyran computer systems. Her fingers flew over the alien consoles as she bypassed security protocols and accessed the strategic database. She discovered crucial information about the Lyrans' remaining forces and their plans for the next phase of the invasion. Just as she was about to finish her work, the Lyrans launched a counteroffensive. The stronghold was on high alert, and the team faced increased resistance. Tom and Jenny fought alongside their groups, holding off the Lyran forces and completing their tasks despite the growing danger. Dr. Grant managed to extract the critical data and prepared to leave the control room. As she made her way back to the exit, she encountered a squad of Lyran soldiers. With quick thinking and determination, she used her improvised weapons and gadgets to fend them off and escape. The team regrouped outside the stronghold, having completed their objectives. The stronghold's power systems were in disarray, and the Lyran command structure had been severely disrupted. The chaos they had created would give Earth's defenders a much-needed advantage. As dawn broke, the survivors and the trio returned to their base, exhausted but triumphant. The battle had been intense, but their efforts had paid off. The Lyrans were disorganized, and their plans were in turmoil. The trio gathered the survivors for a debriefing. Tom, though weary, was filled with pride. "We've dealt a major blow to the Lyrans. Our actions have given us a chance to push back and reclaim our world." Jenny added, "We still have a long way to go, but this victory is a sign that we can win this fight. We've shown that even against overwhelming odds, we can make a difference." Dr. Grant, who had been deeply focused throughout the mission, looked at her companions with gratitude. "We've accomplished something remarkable today, but the fight isn't over yet. We need to stay vigilant and keep moving forward." The final battle had marked a turning point in humanity's struggle against the Lyran invaders. The trio's courage and ingenuity had inspired hope and resilience among the survivors. The fight for Earth was far from over, but the victory had set the stage for a new chapter in the battle for survival. The cost of success. The dawn of victory over the Lyran stronghold brought a mixture of relief and sorrow to Earth's defenders. The successful sabotage of the Lyran command center had disrupted their plans and given the survivors a much-needed boost, but the cost of their success was now becoming evident. The trio, Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee, faced the aftermath of their bold actions with heavy hearts and a renewed sense of responsibility. As the survivors returned to their base, they were greeted by scenes of both triumph and tragedy. The once ruined city now seemed to have a flicker of hope, but the scars of battle were evident everywhere. The team members who had fought bravely were weary, and many had suffered injuries. The emotional and physical toll of the battle was clear on everyone's faces. Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny gathered in the command center, where they had set up a temporary medical station to care for the wounded. The room was filled with the sounds of medical equipment and the murmurs of concerned survivors. Dr. Grant worked diligently, her hands steady despite her fatigue, as she treated the injured and coordinated with makeshift medics. Tom, meanwhile, was helping to organize the survivors and address their immediate needs. He spoke with the injured, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. The weight of leadership was evident in his demeanor, and he struggled to balance the demands of his role with the emotional strain of seeing so many people suffering. Jenny was focused on assessing the damage and organizing the recovery efforts. She worked tirelessly to ensure that the survivors had food, water, and shelter. The logistics of managing a large group in the aftermath of a battle were complex, and she was determined to keep everything running smoothly. As the day wore on, Dr. Grant and Jenny took a moment to reflect on the costs of their recent victory. They sat together in a quiet corner of the base, their faces etched with exhaustion. "We've achieved so much," Jenny said quietly, "but it's hard to ignore the cost. So many people have been hurt, and some of our own didn't make it." Dr. Grant nodded, her expression solemn. "The sacrifices we've made weigh heavily on me. We've done what we had to do, but it doesn't make the losses any easier to bear. We need to remember why we're fighting and honor those who have fallen by continuing the fight." Tom joined them, his face tired but resolute. "We've come a long way, but there's still a lot of work ahead. We need to keep moving forward and ensure that the lives lost were not in vain." The trio knew that their mission was far from over. The Lyrans were still a formidable force, and Earth's defenders needed to be prepared for whatever came next. The victory at the stronghold had given them a temporary edge, but the war was ongoing. In the days that followed, the base became a hub of activity as survivors and defenders worked together to rebuild and recover. The trio continued to lead by example, their leadership and dedication inspiring those around them. Dr. Grant focused on advancing her research and developing new technologies to aid in the ongoing fight against the Lyrans. She worked long hours, driven by the knowledge that their innovations could make a critical difference in the battle ahead. Tom used his diplomatic skills to strengthen alliances among the survivor groups and establish a unified front. He organized meetings and discussions to ensure that everyone was working towards the common goal of defeating the Lyrans. Jenny, ever the organizer, continued to manage the logistics of the recovery efforts. She oversaw the distribution of resources, coordinated with various teams, and ensured that the survivors were receiving the support they needed. Her efforts were crucial in maintaining morale and keeping the base operational. Despite their efforts, the emotional toll of their actions was a constant companion. The trio found moments of solace in each other's company, sharing stories of those they had lost and drawing strength from their shared experiences. One evening, as the sun set and cast a warm glow over the base, the trio gathered for a quiet moment of reflection. They sat together, looking out over the city that had become their battleground and their home. Dr. Grant broke the silence. "We've achieved so much, but the cost has been high. I think about the people we've lost and the sacrifices we've made. It's hard to reconcile the victory with the pain." Tom nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I know, but we have to keep going. We can't let the losses stop us from fighting for a better future. We owe it to those we've lost to see this through to the end." Jenny took a deep breath, her eyes determined. "We've proven that we can make a difference. Our fight isn't just for survival. It's for a world where our sacrifices lead to something better. We have to honor the fallen by continuing to push forward." The trio's resolve was renewed, and they understood that their mission was far from complete. The victory over the Lyran stronghold had been a crucial step, but there were still many challenges ahead. They needed to remain united and determined as they faced the ongoing threat. As the survivors and defenders continued their efforts to rebuild and prepare for the next phase of the conflict, the trio remained at the forefront of the fight. Their leadership, courage, and commitment were a beacon of hope in a world still shrouded in uncertainty. The cost of their success was a constant reminder of the price of war, but it also fueled their determination to see the fight through to the end. They knew that every step forward was a tribute to those who had sacrificed everything and a step closer to a future free from the Lyran threat. With renewed purpose and unwavering resolve, Dr. Grant, Tom, and Jenny continued their struggle, knowing that the path to victory was fraught with challenges but guided by the hope of a brighter tomorrow. A new era, the dust of battle had settled, and a new chapter in Earth's history was beginning to unfold. The survivors, led by Dr. Ellen Grant, Tom Harris, and Jenny Lee, had managed to turn the tide against the Lyran invaders, but the cost of their struggle was evident. As the remnants of the Lyran forces were pushed back and the immediate threat diminished, the trio and their fellow survivors faced the monumental task of rebuilding their world and forging a new future. In the weeks following their victory, the base had transformed from a war-torn refuge into a bustling hub of activity. The survivors, once mere remnants of humanity, had begun to organize and plan for the future. The city, though scarred, was showing signs of recovery as people worked together to clear debris, repair structures, and create a semblance of normalcy. Dr. Grant's lab was now a focal point for technological innovation. The alien technology she had studied was being repurposed to aid in the reconstruction and defense of their new world. Her team worked around the clock, developing advanced systems for communication, energy, and defense. The knowledge they had gained from the Lyrans was proving invaluable in creating a stronger, more resilient society. Tom Harris, having seen the best and worst of humanity, focused on leadership and diplomacy. He worked tirelessly to bring together the various survivor groups into a unified coalition. His efforts were aimed at building a stable government that could manage the resources, enforce order, and plan for the future. The coalition was made up of representatives from different communities, ensuring that every voice was heard and every concern was addressed. Jenny Lee's role in logistics and organization became even more critical as the rebuilding efforts expanded. She oversaw the distribution of resources, coordinated the construction of new facilities, and managed the integration of the various technological advancements developed by Dr. Grant. Her efficiency and dedication kept the recovery process moving forward and ensured that the survivors had what they needed to rebuild their lives. One crisp morning, the survivors gathered in a newly cleared area of the city for a significant event. Tom had organized a ceremony to mark the beginning of a new era. The atmosphere was hopeful, But there was also a palpable sense of reflection as people remembered those who had sacrificed so much. Tom stood at the front of the gathering, his voice carrying a tone of both pride and solemnity. Today we celebrate not just our survival, but the new beginning we have forged together. Our world has changed, but the strength, courage, and unity we have shown will guide us into this new era. We have faced unimaginable challenges, but we have emerged stronger and more determined. Dr. Grant, standing beside Tom, added, "The technology we've developed and the knowledge we've gained will help us build a better future. We are no longer just survivors, we are pioneers of a new age. Let's use what we've learned to create a world where future generations can live in peace and prosperity." Jenny Lee stepped forward, holding a small but symbolic device she had created. "This is a new communication system we've developed, which will help us stay connected and coordinate our efforts as we rebuild. It's a symbol of our resilience and our commitment to forging a brighter future." As the ceremony concluded, the survivors began to work on their various tasks, energized by the sense of purpose and the promise of a new beginning. The city, once a battlefield, was slowly transforming into a thriving community. New buildings rose from the rubble, and once empty streets began to buzz with activity.